welcome to episode 3 of Let's Talk. I don't know if this is your first episode, but it's been amazing. And I'd encourage you to visit our YouTube channel, Instagram handle for highlights. And then, of course, the full episode is on YouTube at RCCG, the new house. It's been enlightening. We've had Mr. Benga Tapere and his beautiful wife come to speak to us. And today we have a special guest with us. Before I reveal my special guest, I'll give us a bit of background to him. But it's been quite an eye opener in the last 2 weeks. So I encourage you to go back and listen. Perhaps, yes, it's your first time and you have questions that might have been answered in the past 2 episodes. My guest today is the Director of Pre-Sales for SAP West Africa. Somebody might be wondering what is SAP. So SAP is systems, application, and products rather in data processing. It's a German software, has global market share. Leading in enterprise, resource planning. He has over 22 years of experience in oil and gas, public sector, utilities, and manufacturing industries. Extensive experience in selling and implementing technological softwares and services. Also has experience in managing large IT transformation projects. Of course, the new house. Married to his beautiful wife, Mrs. Oduayo, and they have 3 lovely children. Please join me as I welcome Mr. Dapo Olulusi.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you join us today. And I'm sure that a lot of people are also happy. I've watched you from afar and I like how you're my people call you like a silent Todogu. You don't talk a lot, but you're moving. So it's so beautiful to have you here today. Come and share your experience with us about 22 years. It's not a joke. So, I'd let you just tell us what the past 22 years has been.
Right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. 22 years of career management consulting and SAP software sales. Been quite interesting. I remember as an undergrad in the University of Ibadan, studying economics. In my second year, um, I was told that Arthur Anderson, um, they were in the hall and they were addressing some students. So they had selected the top students in the different departments, and they wanted to, run a test and do interviews. So even though it was for students in their final year,
Yeah.
I found a way of smuggling myself into into the hall. And that experience defined my career and my life in general. Because I got into that hall and I saw the level of professionalism,
Yeah.
the composure of the staff, you know, and I desired it. I said to myself, one day I will be a professional just like these people.
Yes.
That's the power of having a vision. And I remember that every time my classmates spoke to me back then, my second year, third year, even my final year, I always said to them, once I leave the university, I will work for Anderson Consulting. So when I eventually got into my final year,
Yeah.
I had always had that vision. Having a vision is very powerful, particularly if you back it up with a lot of prayers and hard work. So eventually, my final year, I was told, I was invited by my department to participate in a test and interview by Arthur Anderson.
So you were in year 1 when you snuck in.
Yes, and in my final year, I made it to the top 10 students that were selected. So, I mean, the vision had been there all this while. So we wrote the test. Fortunately, I was part of those who were eventually selected, and I eventually got a job in that organization. I remember going back for the reunion a year after graduation, and people were talking about the organizations I work for. When I said to them that I worked for Anderson Consulting, they were shocked that you had been saying this since your second year.
The power of the
The
tongue.
power of the tongue. Over the years, I've seen the power of confessing what you want, having that vision in front of you, and then working hard towards it. So, I mean, when I got into that organization, the standards were very high. It was fairly difficult environment. The demand was quite high. But a few things I'm going to share with us, even during the course of today, about how to build a successful career. You know, a lot relies on, showing visibility, excellence, hard work. I mean, developing very strong relationships,
Yeah.
and managing your boss.
Very important.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about that in more detail. So that has defined my career and has helped me to be successful over the years. Spent some time under the consulting that eventually became Accenture, and from there moved on to SAP. So it's been a very rewarding career. I'm still looking forward to the future, but so far so good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, the introduction is also already insightful. So, I mean, I'm sure that the next hour would be an eye opener. We have a few questions here.
Okay.
I mean, again, it's Let's Talk. So, and we're going to be really like just learning how to become better at work, the
Right.
questions that tug at our hearts, and how we can actually just fly, as especially as Christians in the workplace.
Absolutely.
You talked about managing your boss. So I will start with that question. So the question says, how do I work with a boss who doesn't know the job, will not take responsibility as expected for the office that they occupy, in a bit not to be responsible when something goes wrong, and still will not turn around quickly? How do I manage that kind of person?
I mean, for me, I see it as an opportunity, and I'll talk about some of my experience over the years. Um, it is possible for you to work with a boss that may not have the level of skill and experience and expertise that is required for that role. But instead of seeing it as a problem, you should actually see it as an opportunity. Because over the years, I've seen that those who progress significantly in their career are those who work hard at making their boss shine. And those who have had problems, in my experience, with their career are those who have tried to outshine their boss or make their boss look bad, or compete with their boss.
But I want him to shine. He's just refusing to shine.
All right. So, I mean, I'll talk a bit about my experience. I've had instances where I've worked with a boss that did not have the requisite skill for the particular project that we worked on. So, this particular project required a lot of coding. The manager I worked with then um, was more of a business writing, professional type, not a technical person. But that particular project required technical expertise. So, I mean, I took on the coding bit of the work, doing the analytics. This was in the early days of my career. And then I now created an interface that did not require coding, but just required clicking on buttons. I spent time with her to teach her how to do the demo to the customer by just clicking on the buttons and changing certain fields. So it was difficult for her because she was not technically inclined, but I spent time, made it simple, explained to her, how to go about it. And it was one of the best performance reviews that I received in the early days of my career. And she went ahead to be a major supporter of my career throughout my time in their organization. I had a colleague that we worked together. She was slightly ahead of me. She was always fighting with this boss, always complaining that she did not know what to do and she was not competent. They were always arguing. And unfortunately, that woman became a problem for her throughout her career, always trying to get her out. So, if you work with a boss that seems to lack skill or experience in a certain area, take on the job as much as you can. You know, try to make the person shine. There are times when I've had to create presentation slides for my boss and then spend like an hour or two teaching the person line by line what to say, you know. And then when we get into the meeting, I don't try to outshine the person. I just keep quiet and I stay in the background and allow the person to shine. They will always remember.
But are they people like, I mean, it's important for men to be teachable.
Yeah.
So when you have someone who is ahead of you, who is your reporting line, it's not teachable
I understand.
and just will not, it's a bit difficult.
I mean, and that's where prayer comes in. I've not experienced it. And that's why we also need to combine work with prayers. But I have seen colleagues who have worked with bosses that lack competence and skill and are insecure.
Yeah.
So, in their own instance, the boss would take their job, you know, present it as his or her own, and then work hard at making that person that did the work to look bad.
Wow.
No, I mean that happens, so that I mean, I was discussing with somebody the other day, and the person said a particular senior person in the bank intentionally worked against the superstar in her team because she was worried that if that person continued to shine, that person will eventually replace her in the role. And so she did a lot of things, spoke against this person, tried to downplay the person, and do a lot of bad things. Made life difficult for this person. So that's where prayer comes in. When I joined the first organization I worked for, there were two major streams. Um, Later on, years down the line, when I spoke to some of my colleagues that were assigned to the other team, they had terrible experiences. But the team I was assigned to, I had lovely bosses, people that were interested in building one's career. Whereas in the other team, they had very difficult bosses that were trying to bring them down. So prayers will help you to get assigned to the right boss. And if you have a difficult boss that is not teachable, that you are trying to make shine, you've done everything you can, you need to pray. I had a difficult boss that was very cunning, it's very sly, so many years ago, and was just trying to make things tough for me. But when I prayed, he was eventually moved out of that position, and I was free. So prayers play a significant. After you've done everything you can physically, back it up with prayers.
So when you do all you can physically, make sure to back it up spiritually.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Thank you.
I mean, one of the things you said would influence my second question, and it's how even from the beginning you had a bit of direction for your career. Now, so for an executive trainee who just got into um, an organization, I would say, let's say, for example, a bank, because usually when you go in as executive trainee, there's no clear path as to say is wherever they post you that you start off with first off. How do you, from your get go in an organization, map out yourself to say, I will so shine in this place that they will not have a choice but to recognize me?
I mean, shining in the workplace it's absolutely critical for developing a good career, because I have had colleagues that had major problems in their career because they were too timid.
Mm.
You know, they did not want to be out there.
Mm.
They rather sit behind a desk behind a computer, and just do the minimum required. And what then happens is, when it's time to make a decision on who to retain or who to let go, the bosses just say, I don't really know this person, and therefore I can't vouch for this individual. So shining in an organization requires um, a lot of visibility. You need to ensure that you offer yourself. I remember some years ago, um, there was an opportunity to lead a team. I mean, to work on a particular project that I was not comfortable with, but it would give a lot of exposure to the senior executives. So it was like a two-edged sword. If you go out there and you put yourself out there and you mess up, you could truncate your career.
Yeah.
I mean, so I was offered the opportunity. My initial reaction was to reject the opportunity, but I have found out over the years that the major highlights of my career occurred when I took a risk. Um, so I decided to take the risk. I took on that opportunity, but not only did I take a risk, I took a calculated risk. So, in other words, I spent time with the individual that was an expert in that area
Mm.
to understand what was required. And I mean, I led the project, it was successful. We made a presentation in Ethiopia to executives of a particular organization, and our executives were there. Um, so when I was making the presentation, they were asking a lot of questions. Who is this person? Which country is he from? How come we've not heard of him? He's doing a good job, you know. And the interesting thing is that when it was time to downsize, the executives that were in that particular engagement remembered me. And they said, okay, we're going to downsize, we're going to shut down this particular unit. But there was an individual that made an presentation from this country when we were in Ethiopia. I want us to retain him. So I took the risk and it paid off eventually. So shining in an organization requires taking risks, going out of your comfort zone,
Mm.
pushing yourself,
Mm.
going beyond the call of duty, um, improving yourself, learning. If you need to get a certification, go ahead. If you need to research on the internet, research, but be the best at what you do.
Mm.
Because once you get complacent and you're not adding value, you're not improving yourself, you have gotten used to a particular rhythm of working, you're not willing to research, you're not willing to push yourself. What then happens is that the person becomes expendable.
Mm.
The person is no longer outshining the others.
Mm.
It's no longer, um, adding value to the organization.
Mm.
So I always advise people, don't remain in your comfort zone. Research. Google is your friend. Go for certifications. Do a master's. Always seek to improve yourself, and you definitely shine.
So to
Thank you.
shine, you need to do the work.
Yeah,
You must be ready to dig in, get your hands dirty where it's
absolutely.
required in terms of learning,
Absolutely.
understanding, being the best at the game, so that at least you make an impact and somebody's able to say, I met this person.
Mm-hmm.
Because you never can tell, I've also realized in the workplace, especially when your office is so big, sometimes even what you don't know, that's not your call, someone just wakes up and gives you a role to take, and it at that point you can't say I don't know. And I think that's a lot of things, a lot of things people don't know. You don't say I don't know to a role. When you're given a job, go and do the work,
Absolutely.
research, don't, it's not my field. And I'm in my own is business development. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
anything about finance. You
Mm-hmm.
need to put in the work, because
Spot on.
there's nothing as being like all round, being an all
Mm-hmm.
rounder,
Mm-hmm.
where yes, you might not be an expert in all the areas, but the fact that you're also able to hold conversations when these various places, topics rather, are going on, is very critical in creating an impression that lasts even when you've left the room. So I
Absolutely.
hope somebody picks something from that. One of the things I'm hearing from a lot of things from what you said is also the role of office politics.
Okay.
So, I mean, especially if you've been in an office where there's been management change, you know that usually when the new management comes, he would bring his own people.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you then play politics without playing politics, so that no matter the wave that is coming, you are able to have positioned yourself not to be affected by the
Yeah.
wind?
Weather the storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot of experience in this particular area
Mhm.
because office politics is inevitable, particularly when you get to a particular level in your career. There's nothing you can do about it. Whether you're a born again Christian or not, you will be exposed to office politics to some degree or the other. And there are a few tips to managing office politics. So, what is office politics essentially? Office politics relates to um, power, essentially, power tussle.
Mm.
How much power and influence certain individuals, have in an organization. That is what politics is. And people, struggle and jostle for the power. The few lessons I've learned the hard way, and some I've learned from other people. Some years ago, I had a boss who was connected to the number one man of an organization and leveraged that relationship to get a huge deal for the organization I was working for. But he did not understand how to manage politics. So he focused on that number one man and disregarded his lieutenants.
Very
Very,
dangerous.
very dangerous. Because the number one man, it was a very hierarchical organization. Number one man had so much power. He just, handed down instructions. So any little thing, my boss will go straight to number one man. This is what I want done. This, and the one will mandate, his deputies to make sure it's done, regardless. And you can imagine what happened. The number one man was retired early.
Ah.
Nobody anticipated it. The deputies took over, and the first thing they did was to try to push out
Okay.
my boss then. And they did everything until they eventually pushed him out. So, one lesson I've learned over the years is power is transient. I've had bosses that were larger than life, they were like gods, they seemed untouchable. And because they were like gods and they seemed untouchable, a lot of people will bend over backwards, step on people's toes, you know, try to destroy other people's career just to please that person. So they set up a camp that I am for this person, I'm against this. That's one of the worst mistakes you can make in your career because I've seen it happen over and over again. So then what then happens? That man that seems larger than life or that woman that seems larger than life gets moved out. Either the employment is terminated or the person relocates to Canada, for example, or the person gets another job in another organization. And the person will not say, oh, because I want to protect these people that were loyal to me, I'm going to remain in my job. So they just leave. And the moment they leave, those people that formed the camp behind them, they become victims. Great. So what I have done over the years is I try not to form any camp. I try to be as neutral as possible because I always anticipate the transition of power.
Mm.
In my organization, somebody joined our organization, and there was a lot of resistance against this person. They were trying to, make the person look bad. And nobody anticipated that that person would become the number one person in the organization. It was not even in the plan. It did not seem a possible transition path. Because this person was, fairly young, and the person came in, at middle management level. Something happened to the number one man. The number one man had to be moved to another position. And they just said, let's make this person number one. The moment that person became number one, she said, I cannot work with this person. Yes. I cannot work with this person. And that was the end. But fortunately for me, I'd managed the politics. Do not make unnecessary enemies. Don't fight an unnecessary battle in the workplace. Because you never can tell. Power is transient.
Very, very.
So that's one of the tips you need to remember in managing office politics. Remember that power is transient. Don't go all out fighting against a particular individual, because that person can turn around to become your boss overnight. And always make sure you balance your relationships. Try to be friendly with everybody. It will really help.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember my line manager, she told me one time, because especially as Christians, sometimes it's hard to play politics. Because I remember as a young person, when I started working, I used to say, it doesn't make sense. I'm a child of God. What is not good, not good. You don't. It used to be really difficult. But she said to me one day, she said, you must work with people so much that even your enemy is useful when you need them.
Absolutely.
So don't be so, this person is, no, I can't. Just make sure that when you need to be courteous, be courteous. When you need to be just deal with people as should, so that even your enemy is able to be useful to you on the day when you're not there.
Yeah.
And God will help us.
Amen.
Have you ever worked in a toxic environment?
Yes, I have.
How did you manage it?
Working in a toxic environment, you need to identify what is causing the toxicity. Because in the early days of my career, we had a particularly very difficult person who had very high standards and was very intolerant of anybody that seemed to fall short of those very high standards. Usually, that is what causes a toxic environment. When there is a misalignment between the expectations of your boss and what you have to offer. So you have a tendency of grinding against each other. And this happened in the early days of my career. We had very difficult, arrogant, people that we worked with that were not patient. They were not around. They were not willing to develop a person. They just wanted you to come ready-made, and to hit the ground running. And if you did not come ready-made and you not hit the ground running, they go all out. In fact, we've had instances where some have even gone to HR to check the recruitment process to say, how was this individual recruited, into this organization? So you need to find what is causing the toxic environment. And what I have done over the years is, if I realize, I remember I was working on a particular project, and the not my boss, but somebody that I worked with was not happy. And it was constantly, giving us a tough time. So I spent time to really understand what really is the problem. So I eventually spoke to him, and he said, the reason why I'm not happy is because you are not carrying me along on your line of work. I need you to carry me along. And so what I did was I went to meet him in his hotel room, and I sat down and I spoke to him. I said, "What really is the problem?" He explained the problem to me. I said to him, "Not to worry. I will make sure that we have regular alignment calls on a weekly basis. I'll show you what we've done. I will see how we can work together." The interesting thing is, after that meeting, and after we started having those weekly alignment calls, the toxic environment cleared. And that particular individual became one of my greatest supporters in the organization. Clearing a toxic environment requires a lot of humility and your willingness to be teachable and to adjust. What does my boss like? And I've given a lot of advice to a lot of people about this. I've had bosses that love very nice looking PowerPoint presentation slides. They like it. They said to me, "I'm a visual person. I don't like wordy slides. I like slides that have very high quality, visually appealing." Okay. So I know that's what that boss likes. So I go out of my way to make sure I deliver top notch presentation slides with nice graphics, few words, you know, to make sure that my bosses have. I've had bosses, and you'll be quite surprised. I've had bosses that said to me, "I like people that are well dressed." It's quite interesting. They love people that are well put together. Yes, that dress professionally. And at the point in time when we were about to convert some contract staff to full-time employees, and one of the staff that had deep technical skills was considered, that my boss said, "No, he doesn't dress well. Wow. His jacket is always too short. The sleeves are too short. His tall. His trouser. I don't like the way the guy had deep technical competence." Wow. So it's a total package. You need to speak right. We call it. You're trying to determine the person's fit to the organization. Never take your dressing for granted. It could be the difference between getting a job, retaining the job or not. Dress well, speak well, have knowledge, and just be personable. So you've had people that are in toxic environments, work environments, because they have not aligned with the expectations of the organization or the individual. They do not have the requisite skill or the persona, the personality. They're not well refined. They're a bit rough around the edges. And sometimes people just don't like such people. But occasionally you may come across a toxic environment that's caused by somebody that's just insecure. You've dressed well, you are very good at your job, you speak well, you're a well-tuned professional, but somebody is insecure because of your excellence and just wants to get you out. So in such an instance, you need to pray. You need to pray that, and God answers those prayers, that the person should be moved somewhere else.
I agree.
Sometimes you may get an opportunity to build a relationship with somebody that's more senior to that person. Build that relationship so that person can protect you. So it's a combination of working hard, being personable, being excellent, developing good relationships, and being prayerful.
Eventually, you need to learn to manage your stakeholders.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
very crucial to how far and how well you go, because there are people who stay in an organization 10, 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. They don't go far. And someone else shows up 5 years, 7 years, and the person is flying, in the same organization. So management of your stakeholders really determines how well and how far you would go. But we all know that there are meetings where your how well and how far might not really matter. It's a function of who is able to stick the neck out for you. Absolutely. At that point.
That is true.
How do you get a sponsor in the workplace?
All right. I have had sponsors all my career. People that speak up for me in meetings that I cannot attend, because at my level, because of my level at that time.
Yeah.
People that push my career, that ensure that I get a double promotion if that's the state where I'm at, or to ensure that I am removed from a list of people to be downsized.
Mm.
And I call them destiny helpers, you know, because those people have defined, it's because of such people, there are about five of them.
Mm.
Because of such people that I am still, in my professional career today.
Mm.
But there is something that is unique to all these five people
Mm.
that triggered the relationship we had. One thing is that all of them had unique needs at different points in time that I was able to fulfill.
Mm.
You know, um, all of them require somebody that will go beyond the call of duty.
Yeah.
You know, and I was able to step up to that. All of them require somebody that could develop a good relationship with them. You know, and I was able to develop that. The five sponsors I've had, coincidentally, have been arch enemies of some of my colleagues. So just to show you that you are largely responsible for your career.
Mm.
You may find some impossible people occasionally,
Yeah.
but most of the time, you know, getting a sponsor is largely dependent on how you're able to develop good relationships.
I
So
agree.
many of my colleagues have had difficult careers, lost their jobs just because they've found it very difficult to develop very good interpersonal relationship, particularly with the people that matter. So to get a sponsor in the workplace, you must add value to the individual. There will be something that you have that they need.
Mm.
There must be some value you are adding to them. Because if you are not, so right now I've come to become quite senior in my organization, and I have a lot of people that I work with. There are some individuals that are not value adding.
Mm.
They're not adding value to me. It's very difficult to get them to do their jobs. I had a particular individual that I worked with. Um, she was responsible. We're bringing in some expatriates.
Okay.
Very interesting story. We're bringing in some expatriates to do a demo for a big company in Nigeria. And all she had to do was to take care of the logistics,
Okay.
sort out the visas, invitation letters, all those things. And inform this person 2 or 3 weeks before they were to arrive in the country. Get these letters ready, get this done. I kept following up. Oh, I'll do it out. She just kept delaying and delaying and delaying. Until it got to a point where they had to escalate to me. And I went, this is taking too long. Just get this invitation letter across to them so they can apply for their visas. So she eventually did it, sent the invitation letter to the individuals coming, but she was using a template. So she did not remove the name of the person she used the same template for previously. So you had a difference between the name and the passport number. So there was an error that they could not work on. And it was, on a letterheaded paper signed. So this person identified the error, sent it back to me. I mean, your colleague made a mistake. So I called her to say, there is a mistake on the letter you sent. Can you please change it? And she said to me, did you not see my out of office response?
I beg your pardon.
I am not in the office. I am on vacation. I cannot attend to this. And I said to her, I understand you're on vacation, but by the time you come back from vacation, it will be too late. The meeting will be over. All you need to do is log into your laptop, change the name, and send it back. It will not take you more than 2 minutes. She refused.
Wow.
So I had to go out of the country, find somebody else to make the corrections. And I eventually got them into the country. Years later, it was time to downsize. And they were asking questions, and her name came up. And somebody said, "Oh, why don't you go and defend?" I said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sponsor her, I'm not going to support her because I almost always get escalations about her work. Poor work ethics, lack of excellence, terrible, you know, um,
Interpersonal.
interpersonal relationship, a bad character. And this person is born again, tongue talking, worker in the church. I'm also born again, but I will not support bad behavior.
Mm.
So you need to add value. Find out that person that you want to sponsor, what value can you add to the person?
Mm.
How can you take the load off this person?
Mm.
How can you support this person one way or the other? And may not be something that even relates to the work. Some of my sponsors became my sponsors because I taught them investment.
Mm.
I told them, you get paid this much, you need to set up this account, you need to buy foreign shares. This is how to buy it. I was on their case. The deadline is around the corner. You need to change your money to dollars. This was way back in 2010. You need to buy those shares. And because I was constantly showing them investments and what to do, and eventually paid off, they became my sponsor. So there must be something. Some people need someone to advise them on how to raise their family. Some people need somebody to help them with prayers. Some people need somebody to help them run errands. You need to put in the work,
Staying within your job description will not get you a sponsor,
No, it
basically.
won't. It won't.
You must be someone who is able to go out of your way to, I mean, in life, actually, if you're always a taker, there's only so much with how far you can go, honestly. You must be someone who is also willing to part with something. Sometimes it's even just an ear to listen.
Yeah.
Somebody just wants to, just pour out, and you're just there to listen. You don't have to give advice or anything. You just call to check on them sincerely. How are you doing? Know what's going on with you. Again, it's you can't withdraw from someone's emotional bank that you have not invested in.
Absolutely.
And that's the honest to God truth. So let's do better. I was listening to Apostle Selman, and he said that God, no matter what he has to do, is from men to men. He won't come down to do it. So if you need men to go as far as God has, intended for you, then you need to do what it takes to have men on your side in a godly way.
Absolutely. Without compromising
in a
your
godly
faith.
way. It's very important.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was going that investment direction, and I'm glad that you brought it up. I know that apart from work, your career, you also have like a personal business that you do. Especially now that you play at very senior management role in your career, how are you able to juggle both of them such that there's no work lethargy and your business is also not suffering?
Okay, I mean, a few things about running a business while you are also developing your career. Um, the first thing is you have to ensure that there's no conflict of interest.
Very important.
Yeah, I have seen that happen. A lot of people have offered, and I've always said no. Do not compete with your employer. Even though you may get away with it physically or spiritually, there's always a price to pay. So even working as a consultant, implementing IT software, I have had offers from people saying, "Oh, come and do a side job." They call it PP.
Yeah, private practice.
Private practice. You can just work on weekends. But I have a very sharp conscience, and I believe that, I mean, I've been favored and lucky in life generally, and I believe to a large extent that it's because I try to avoid some of those things.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people become very unlucky, and you can't really explain why they have such bad luck.
I think is it short term, or is it either short term or long term trap that people don't seem to realize?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So avoid conflict of interest. Do not compete with your employer. Also, you need to manage your time.
Mm.
If you are running a business that is taking time away from your employer, it's also a form of conflict of interest.
Mm.
So you need to be very careful with that as well. For me, some of the businesses I've done, I have more or less like maybe I'm on the board
Mm.
of a particular organization, and I have declared it to my organization
Mm.
in a written form. That I've been invited to sit on the board of a particular organization, declaring this. They ask a few questions so that they just to be sure there's no conflict. So that happens. In terms of some other, you know, businesses, what I have found to be very useful is I quickly train a particular individual to be a manager
Okay. Mm.
that runs the organization. You have to invest in that.
Mm.
You cannot try to make the maximum profit by doing the groundwork. You are the one going to buy stuff, you are the one processing it,
Mm.
you are the one supplying it, you are the
Mm.
one doing the accounting, you are the one doing everything because you want to maximize profit. And at the same time, you're also a professional. There will be your work will most likely
So
suffer.
far. Mm.
And I've seen instances where people have actually lost their day jobs because they were distracted by their side
And
business,
then the side business cannot sustain
cannot
the
sustain the family.
lifestyle. Mm.
So you need to be very careful with that. Um, I mean, what I have said to people is train a manager, make sure the manager is able to run the business, and then you monitor what the person does.
Mm.
The other thing you need to be careful about in running a business is be very careful about transitioning, leaving your career
Mm.
for that business. I know so many people
Yeah.
that they have left their jobs to go and focus on business. And you see, the problem with business, particularly in Nigeria, is in the short term, it may look so beautiful.
Mm.
You're making profit that covers your 6 month salary, you can make it in a month.
Mm.
Don't be in a hurry to leave your job to focus on that alone. Because what I've seen happen is that you make so much profits and you say, this thing is good. I might as well leave my job and just focus on it. And then people get into it. And what makes that business very profitable attracts so many other people.
Yes.
So before you know what's happening, there's a glut. And because there is a glut, your profit margin
Begins to drop.
continuously drops because there's so much competition.
Mm.
And before you know what's happening, it's become a loss-making business.
Mm.
Sometimes in the short term, a business may look so well, government policy can change it. Sometimes the individuals there's a business I'm doing right now, and there's some individuals, my supporters in the organization, helping out, only for me to learn last month that they've all left the organization. They've all jackpot. And that business has dried up.
Another business affected by the
You
Japa
understand?
syndrome.
So if and someone was saying to me, if you had left your job to
Yeah.
focus on this, that's how you'd have been left hanging. So you need to be very careful. Don't allow it to distract you. Don't allow a conflict of interest. Make sure you hire a manager, train the manager, let the manager run the business, and just supervise what he does. Right.
Okay. I mean, that's really important, especially the part about leaving your career because the side business is now almost scaling up, And sometimes, people don't also realize that the fact that it's not your sole source is also one of the reasons is blooming because
Mm-hmm.
there's no pressure
Yeah,
on the inflow. So
absolutely.
you are able to then pour it back into the business, unlike when that's the only way,
Mm-hmm.
you have to fund the family. So it's something that really we need to
Yeah.
look into. I don't know if you've ever tried going through the venture capitalist route. So you have a business is doing well to some extent, but you want to scale up and you don't have the required amount of capital to scale up, even though it looks promising and all that. What are the things that you've considered, put in place, to be able to, speak to people to say, um, these are my numbers and all that, and I'd like you to come and invest.
Mm.
And when you go to invest, I know that sometimes venture capitalists, for example, they ask for a certain percentage. How do you determine the reasonability of the percentage that they're asking you for and the conditions that are attached to it?
Venture capitalism, if it's done the proper way, is good, but it can also be very dangerous.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that have gotten themselves into a mess
Mm.
with the police,
Wow.
with the courts, because of investors.
Mm.
So you need to be very, very careful. Not everybody's money is money you should take.
True.
Um, I have a friend that worked together extensively over the years who runs a venture um, capital outfit. And he said a few things to me that formed the foundation of my assessment of investors. He said they focus more on the personality
Mm.
of the investor rather than his money.
Mm.
That if they do their background checks and they find out the person is prone to corruption, person is a difficult person, person likes to cheat, and it's just a difficult personality, no matter how interested he is in the business, they try to avoid such an individual.
Mm.
Or if it's somebody that is prone to business failure.
Mm.
But the moment you get invested into your business, they can try to detect the business. Sometimes ruin it. I have a friend that set up a company, I think in the industrial area in Ilupeju. Business was doing very well. We're making money. I think they were producing, I can't remember, maybe plastics or something. And they wanted to scale up. Um, it was very promising. I think they approached the banks. The banks were demanding for collateral, landed property in Ikoyi and all that difficult. So he decided to speak to individual investors. And the individual investors requested for share capital.
Mm.
We'll give you this amount of money, or you need to give us shares in your organization. And that was the mistake he made. Gave them shares, they eventually got majority shares, and they pushed him out, you know. The business became unwielding. They were making demands on him, demanding for profit sharing, money that should be reinvested in the business. Just very difficult people. They took him to court.
Wow.
Eventually, they had to dissolve the business. So you have to be very careful about that. There's also a spiritual angle. There are some people whose monies are not clean.
Yeah.
The moment that money touches your business, that business is going down.
Mm.
So you need to spiritually check who this person is, find out the personality of the individual, and be careful also, because there's some relationships that you should exclude from business,
Mm.
because those relationships are so delicate that if something goes wrong in the
In
business,
business.
the knock-on effect will be too much. You are doing a business and business is doing well, and you have a boss, don't go and meet your boss that come and put money in my business, because you go and meet him to come and put money in my business and the business goes down, it's going to
It will
affect
affect
your
your
it's
work.
going to affect your work.
Yeah.
Don't go and meet your in-laws. You can meet your in-laws for money for your business, because if something goes wrong with the business, it's going to affect your relationship with your in-laws. So just be very careful. Um, when you have your numbers right, you can engage an accountant to evaluate your company,
Mm.
to come up with a reasonable, share, um, dividend payout structure, all those accounting things. You can do that. And you can actually, my recommendation is approach a venture capitalist, a company that does that.
Yeah.
Be very careful about approaching the general public for money.
Mm. Mm.
Be very careful about certain family and friends. Just be careful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if your numbers are right, you will always get investors, but just be very careful.
Very critical. I know that you mentioned investment, when you were talking about sponsorship, your sponsors rather. At what point is the right time to start investing?
All right. Um, I remember I was preaching a message in church the other day um, about the principles of divine financial prosperity.
Mm.
I think one of the best decisions I made was to give a mandate to HR the first year I started working to deduct 10% of my monthly income after tax and use that money to buy foreign shares. The reason why I made that decision was that I found out that the moment the money gets to my hand, it's gone. Somebody will
Always come up,
call. I need something. Somebody's about to die. School fee. The money will just
go.
disappear. You know. So if it does not get to me,
I don't spend what I don't
I
have.
don't spend what I don't have. So they deduct from source
Mm.
and they set up that um, foreign account. And they were buying the shares when the naira was below 100 naira to the dollar.
You had the good days, oh.
You
You
know,
had the good
it was so
days.
many years ago, um, the day of military government. So the money the dollar was below, and they bought the shares consistently over the years. And those shares I still have today. Now the dollar is 1,130. Some of those shares we bought then were at $40 per share then.
Yeah.
They are now $300 per share. The thing about the shares is that it's a unit.
Yeah.
So we bought it at 40 and it's now 200. You sell it at 200. So my advice to people is from the first day you start earning an income, whether you are doing a business or you're a career person, be disciplined
Mm.
to set up an investment vehicle. Two major investment vehicles I recommend, particularly for business people. You must set up a pension account. I have a lot of business people that don't have pensions. The money comes, you just spend it. Because at a point in time, you may not be able to work. Things may not be as rosy as it is right now. The value of the pension is you can't touch it.
Mm.
If you buy property, you can still sell it. If you buy shares, you can sell it. But pension cannot be touched except for the voluntary contribution part. So it is secure there. You can't touch it until you attain a particular age. So it's the most, it's the investment that is not liquid.
But in terms of time value of money, though,
Mm-hmm.
is it is it really um um yeah, I know. I mean, eventually you'll be able to take a certain percent every month. But in terms of time value of money, so for example, let's say one naira was, let's say, $100 at that time. Now 1 naira cannot even do anything.
Yeah.
So in terms of time value of money, is it really
Worth it.
worth it?
I mean, there are a few things I did some years ago. There's something they call annuity,
Yeah.
where you put aside some money annually. I put it in an insurance company that doubles as both life insurance and annuity is money that is set aside when you attain to a particular age. They pay you a particular amount monthly for life.
Mm.
And if anything happens, God forbid, they pay multiple of that to
Family.
your family. Um, I was just thinking about it the other day. The amount of money they were supposed to pay me when I started almost 10 years ago it's really not so. Back then, 10 years ago, that money they were supposed to pay monthly looked so huge. But now, in the scheme of things, it's
Quite
not.
insignificant. Yeah.
Inflation
Mm-hmm.
has eroded the value of it.
Yeah.
But I, I kind of thought to myself, that money that I was putting in annuity annually, if I did not put, I would have spent it.
Fair enough.
I would rather have that monthly payment and use it for something because it's monthly payment for life.
Mm.
So once you attain to a particular age, you get that payment. So even you should not um, say because of inflation, you will not invest. The way I try to manage the erosion of value through inflation, what you mean by time value of money,
Yeah.
is to diversify the portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the inflation that is eroding the value of our investment is because of the weaknesses of our economy.
True.
So we invest some money in the country and we invest some money outside of
Outside.
the country. There is an investment app called Bamboo
Yeah.
that I always advise people register. Forget about whatever the exchange rate is. Just
Register.
register, buy something.
Mm.
Buy Tesla shares, buy Amazon shares, buy Apple shares, buy those shares. Don't worry and have a long term view because the economy of the United States is relatively strong.
Mm.
So the erosion of value that we're experiencing in Nigeria will most likely not affect the United States as much
As it is
as
here.
it's affecting us here in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So diversify your portfolio. Put some money in economies that you will not experience that erosion of value, and also invest some money in your country. If you have the means, property is also good because the value appreciates with inflation. Somebody spoke to me just a few days ago that rent in Lekki Phase 1
Yeah.
is between 8 to 15 million naira.
True.
I said, is that down payment for mortgage? How do you put down 15 million naira
Yeah.
to stay in a property for 12 months?
And you might still need to renovate when you move in.
It's mind blowing. And it was painful for me because there was a time when I was living in Lekki Phase 1 and we could have pushed ourselves to buy property there at some point, you know. So invest in real estate. It's good. It also appreciates
With
with
inflation.
inflation.
Yeah, that I think that's one of the areas that inflation actually works in favor of.
Mhm.
Some other place here might see it down, but downside rather. But when it comes to property, like it just goes up, especially in our climes.
Absolutely.
One last question before we call it a night.
Oh.
I know that with your job, it requires you traveling a lot.
Yeah.
Especially whether it's local or international.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you still have family. So,
Absolutely.
how do you juggle um, your commitment at work, your commitment at home, your commitment to the children? Because I mean, especially now where you have teenage children, and it's quite important with what's going on now to be quite hands on.
Mm-hmm.
How do you juggle it? Because we have a lot of young people who are also now, getting into the workplace, young men who are married and women, especially who are married. And sometimes it's a struggle, really. So, how have you been able to juggle it successfully? And perhaps we can learn one or two from it.
Right. The Bible says, teach your children the way they should go. When they grow up, they
Yeah.
will not depart from it. Um, I'm particularly grateful um, for the house fellowship
Mm.
because when we decided to make our home a house fellowship center, little did I know that it will end up to benefit the family and particularly my children
Mm.
the most.
Wow.
A lot of things that I've had the opportunity to teach my children were taught in the house fellowship
Mm.
because they asked a lot of questions. And when we take a topic, they'll be asking questions. So why is it wrong? Why is it right? What's the Bible's verse backing it up and all that? So we got an opportunity to impart the word into the
Mm.
children at a very young age. Now that they are teenagers and not in the country, the values that we're able to pass across to them during the house fellowship, still keeping them strong.
Sure.
The second opportunity we've had is the family altar,
Mm.
and I have my wife to thank for that. She's the policewoman of the family altar. We must have it today. No matter what, no matter how tired, she insists that we pray and share the scripture. So we take a particular verse of scripture and we ask the children to interpret.
Mm.
So they try to interpret. I try to teach them. Over the years, it's helped them to understand, the Bible, and they also read it on their own. Laying hands on the children, praying for them,
Mm.
it's also very important. But when COVID struck,
Yeah.
and we had to get them laptops
Mm.
to work, to study from home, it exposed a lot of children to the internet
Yes.
prematurely. And it's only a matter of time that children will start investigating and checking things. So in recent times, I've had to install a solution on their computers that monitor where
Where
they
they go
go,
to.
what they search,
Mm.
what size they visit. It's called Net Nanny.
Net nanny.
NETNANNY.
Mm.
And I, full disclosure, I have this stuff for your phones and your laptops. I run the report regularly to see what you have been searching for,
Mm.
what sites you visited, just to make sure that there is accountability.
Mm. Very
You know,
important.
so apart from studies, they look at a lot of memes nowadays and all that.
Yes.
So that also helps to control things. Um, being a person that travels a lot, also a minister of the gospel, also a family man, requires a lot of wisdom
Mm.
and managing time carefully.
Mm.
Because sometimes you can actually overstretch yourself,
Yeah.
and there's always the temptation to ignore one in order to fulfill the other.
Mm.
So sometimes I deliberately turn down certain things that can erode family time.
Okay.
Sometimes we go on vacation. I don't like a situation where I'm the man, let the wife and children go on vacation while I stay back in Nigeria and hustle. No, we go together so I can have time to bond with the children and get to know them better. You need to balance things. Even in ministry,
Mm.
you must have backups
Mm.
because there are some times when work requires travel
Yeah.
and it may clash with ministration.
Mm-hmm.
So you should have a situation where there are other pastors that can step in.
Also, the investment in people coming up again.
Absolutely. You need to
Yeah.
give people an opportunity to grow spiritually
Mm.
by exposing them to opportunities to minister in one dimension or the other. So that things can be balanced. Because I keep talking about Paul Yonggi Cho. Paul Yonggi Cho, in the early days of his ministry, did everything in ministry.
Mm.
He'll be the one to do everything. He abandoned his family, abandoned his health, until he had a major health crisis.
Mm.
And God spoke to him. He was bedridden for, I think, almost 6 months before he became David Yonggi. And it was there God spoke to him that you need to balance things. So, as ministers of the gospel, as professional executives, as family people, you must allocate time for each of those areas
Mm.
and delegate your responsibilities. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It
Delegation.
is God's work, it is God's family.
Mm.
He will take care of it.
Mm.
Just do your part and trust in God to take care of the rest.
Thank you. Thank
Right.
you. Sorry, I have one question that I omitted. This is not career related, but I mean we're at Let's Talk. This person's question says, please, when I was a child, I used to have a dream seeing myself with actresses. And even till date, I have those dreams, even though not so often. Then when I grew up, everywhere he went to, I suppose, church, he would be ministered to say he had the gift of ministry. But he's confused. He or she is confused and doesn't know what to really do, even though they have passion for acting and they still have a lot to discover about themselves. So they know like how to manage like the purpose and where God has assigned them to be. So the person really needs like advice on
Mhm.
how to really go about that.
All right. I mean, I've always said to people, be careful about your passions. Your passions can make or mar. Just be careful.
Hmm.
Growing up, I was an artist. I love to draw.
Oh,
I used to represent my school in drawing competitions.
wow.
But I thank my dad. Kept coming to my room and say, there is no money in this thing you are doing. You need to develop a professional career. I will complain, argue, then start seizing my comics,
Wow.
taking my drawings away. And, my mom will bring me arts teachers. They'll teach me how to do sculpture and all that. So I wanted to become an artist.
Hmm.
But imagine, not that being an artist is a bad thing,
Hmm.
but I just had to be careful.
Hmm.
So I've always said to people, you need to weigh the risks. You can pursue your passion and your dream on the side,
Hmm.
but you must have something that puts
Something
food on the table.
very important.
Because if you give yield to your passion in its entirety, you may become poor. But I will not say you should kill your dreams,
Yeah.
but just approach it carefully.
Hmm.
I mean, speaking to some of my friends and even my children, you hear three or four things that the Gen Zs talk about. You can imagine. Blogger.
Blogger.
I want to be an influencer.
Yes.
I want to be a content creator.
Yes.
And they will be fighting. My good friend spent millions on giving his son the most expensive
Education.
education. And then the boy turns around to say he wants to become a content creator. The fights, they will be arguing. That's what I have passion for. I spent hours watching TikTok. That's what I want to become. So the man called me. He said, help me. This requires prayer. So we prayed. I didn't get an opportunity to discuss with the guy, but eventually the guy calmed down. He's studying economics now. He can still do the content creation
On the side.
on the side.
Yeah.
You know, what I say to people is when you want to pursue a particular dream and passion, look at the percentage
Mm.
of people that are very successful in that line. You want to become an actor. How much do actors earn?
Mm.
What percentage of actors on the Broadway in New York, in different countries, are very successful? These actors you see in Nollywood, in Hollywood, for every one actor that's very successful, you have millions of actors that are on the streets,
Yeah.
struggling for audition, trying to make ends meet.
Even the successful ones also have like
They,
things that they're
they also
doing.
struggle.
They're doing brand. You see them. They have
Yeah,
clothing lines. They have
yeah.
this. They have
They
that.
do a lot of things.
Yeah.
So be very careful. So for that person, I would say have a business or a profession that you are pursuing and pursue your dream of acting, that you keep seeing yourself in dreams acting on the side. So just in case it doesn't work out, you are still able to put food on the
Food on your
table
table.
and make something out of life. Right.
Thank you very much, sir. It's been, yes, an insightful episode 3 of Let's Talk. I'm sure that you have been blessed. I've been blessed. I've been enlightened. I mean, you heard it first here. He wanted to be an artist. Can you imagine? So, um, we meet again next week, Thursday at 7 p.m. To our online guests, thank you for taking our time to be a part of this with us. We don't take your attendance for granted. We appreciate you. And don't forget to keep the questions coming. Say it the way you feel it, and we'll be here to answer your questions to the best that we can. And trust that, I mean, when it touches your heart, it's expanded, and you are better off after each episode. I would see you again next week, Thursday. My name is Choma Wanko. It's been an amazing time being your anchor for today's episode. Um, Next week is another promising one. Please don't miss it. I can't spill, but you won't regret that you made it. You made out time to be a part of it. Thank you. God bless you. Have a good night, rest.